Hi, I'm your host, Roger Zhao. In today's conversation, we're joined by Paul Avila and Catherine Butler of Pauly's Project, which is a wonderful mutual aid organization that has operated in and around Skid Row for the past decade. During these past 10 years, they've helped countless unhoused people get access to food, clothing, hygiene supplies, and connected them to housing and counseling services. As a heads up, this is a completely unfiltered and honest conversation about a very serious and complex topic, the homelessness crisis that Los Angeles is facing. We touch on poverty, mental health, addiction, crime, and death. But our conversation is also about compassion, dedication, hope, and redemption. We hope you learn something and get inspired to get involved. This conversation is really an opportunity to get a little bit deeper in talking with, the two key figures of Pauly's Project and get a better understanding of, what really is behind the movement, what's the key to your success, what you guys have been seeing on, the reality of the ground near Skid Row and downtown LA and, this massive homelessness issue that Los Angeles is facing. So that being said, that's kind of my opening monologue ramble, but let's go ahead and get on to it. For those who are not familiar with Pauly's Project, maybe, Paul, you want to give the little elevator pitch, the brief overview, of what you guys have done before we get deeper into, our conversation.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. Always appreciate the opportunity to share a story. So thank you, Roger. So Pauly's Project now started about 10 years ago, and it was inspired by my blind and autistic son, Pauly. And we learned at a young age that Pauly loved music, so as he got older, I started doing a lot of volunteer work in Skid Row, and I was serving at the Midnight Mission. And one day I was walking back to my car, saw this homeless gentleman with headphones on, and he was dancing. I just remember like it was yesterday, and he had the biggest Colgate smile, and I immediately had the connection of Pauly and music and this guy's smile, like something touched my heart, so I went home that night, tossing and turning. I'm like, how do I make that connection of, Pauly and again, the gift of music and homelessness. And I said, I'm going to start something called Pauly's Project in honor of my son, and we're going to share the gift of music by donating radios. Simple concept. I had the number in my head of 50. So I said, through family and friends, we got donations. We got these 50 radios. And me and Pauly hit the streets and we distributed the radios. People started seeing what we're doing, start posting, and it just kind of evolved from there, So 10 years later, we started, now we have a street outreach team, and we have, we've had thousands of volunteers over the years, but I think it starts with building relationships on the front lines, and that's what Pauly's Project is known for. So, we'll hit maybe 5 to 6 encampments the first and third of every Sunday. And, so I've seen a lot in a 10-year span, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So definitely, I'm no expert in homelessness, but I got a lot of knowledge, through experience hands-on. And I think we've just started a positive movement in our community. And that's what I love to share with others, just sharing compassion and kindness to helping those in need.
Yeah, that's incredible, Paul. And, having volunteered with you for much of that last decade, I really want to commend you for creating such a positive movement. Every time I go out with you guys, like, not only do I feel like I'm doing something great with the community, but I feel like the energy and the positivity among the volunteers themselves is like, I've met so many friends through you and Catherine and your collective crew, and you guys really give me hope and inspiration, and that's why it's been so incredible to join you on kind of a leadership level. So I can definitely attest to everything that you had just mentioned. One question that I have, when I first started getting into this, right, I started with a group called Monday Night Mission, which I know you're very familiar with, and we were going down to Skid Row at night and handing out sandwiches and, brown paper bag lunches and things like that. And I remember the first couple times I ever did it, it was pretty eye-opening and straight up depressing. I mean, there are things down there that I saw, the human condition just being really, really tough. And I remember going home and like crying later that night. And I remember one of the things that really struck me from my first time that I did it is we were down there and within 5 minutes of arriving on site with our group and, starting to distribute lunches, I remember seeing a elderly black man. He was missing a leg, so he was, special needs, like handicapped. And I remember him being distraught. He was complaining that somebody had stolen his suitcase, just a couple hours earlier, and I'm just thinking to myself, I can't even imagine that you would steal from an elderly man, who's crippled. What is happening? And it took me a while to, I knew that I had to go back, and I knew that, there was a calling. These people need help, and I need to go there. But it was such an eye-opening thing that, this is the human condition that, I was really kind of shook by that for a long time. And I guess my question for you is, the first couple of times you did it, what was that like? How did you have to adjust? What did you observe? What assumptions did you have going into it that immediately changed within, the first couple times you did it?
Yeah. I think too, just to back up before I dive into that, because I think it kind of aligns with my answer, is that part of our story is I had an uncle that was homeless, and he'd always be in and out of prison. And so at a young age, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, my mom would take me down to the streets of Skid Row. So my uncle would get released from prison. We would drop off cigarette cartons, clothing, hygiene items, all the stuff that we give out today, so I think that really instilled and planted a seed in my heart. So as I got older, I was more open to it, not to say I was at a young age, I wasn't in the thick of it, but just seeing it through the back of my mom's car window, it just opened my eyes. Maybe at a young age, it planted a seed in me that I didn't really know. So when I got back and maybe in my mid 30s and said, I want to do this, I wasn't so fearful, because I think at a young age, like I said, it kind of opened my eyes already. So just kind of going back to a place that I was already familiar with. So I think if I just would have went out of the blue as a molder, I would have been a little more shook up about it. But I had already kind of accepted that area, I guess you could say. But yeah, it was seeing stuff, like you mentioned, something very traumatic, or, you see a fight or somebody got stabbed or something like that. So again, even though I was a little more open to it, that first year you see a lot, and it is devastating and traumatic and stuff normal people shouldn't see. So it did take me a little while to warm up to it. But in other words, I think I was kind of already ready for this journey and path, being that, at a young age, I had kind of seen a little bit. So, but yeah, it's not a place that you totally get used to, I think when I first started going out, I had to earn people's respect. So they questioned me a lot, why are you down here by yourself? And I said, hey, I want to help you guys. I want to dive into homelessness. And it's almost like I'd go at night and my family's like, what the heck are you doing? Going down 10, 11 o'clock. And to be honest with you, I'm Mexican. I'd go in predominantly black areas, some encampments. There's, different races, different areas. And I remember at that time, it was even worse, because I think some of the Mexicans and the blacks were kind of beefing with each other, had issues. So at first, I remember a couple thought I was like an undercover cop. They're like, you're coming down here 11 p.m. by yourself at night. Do you have a death wish? We don't get it. What's the catch? And I said, no, I want to dive into homelessness. I want to help you guys. How can I be of service? So it took a while to get that trust and respect, but I think even that first year I was cussed at, spit on, some guy, ran after me. You see everything at night, especially when you're by yourself. So I look at it now like that was a pretty crazy move, but it kind of opened the doors to all our volunteers now to go and be loved and accepted. It's because I already laid the groundwork by myself and I took that risk, but it paid off. And, building relationships is everything.
Wow. Now that I know that, you've gone there probably since the 90s, I guess, is when you first started going down there as a youth, or?
Yeah, it was probably mid 80s.
Mid 80s. Wow. Mm-hmm. I'm relatively new to LA. I moved here in 2005. And, even in that short period of change from 2005, to when I started volunteering in, 2015, 2014, give or take. And then now in 2023, Skid Row is grown, it's morphed. I think the realities on the street have gotten far worse in some regards. Maybe in some areas they've gotten better. I would love to get your perspective, having witnessed this, through multiple decades now. Like, what are your thoughts on, Skid Row as a whole, how conditions are going? Is there anything to be hopeful about in that, in that journey?
Yeah, I think as a young child, I really didn't grasp the perspective of how big Skid Row. So I use my mom almost as a gauge. So as she's gone back recently, from back then, she said it was like the main streets, like, San Julian, San Pedro, 6 and 7. She's like, it was like maybe a smaller radius, but now it's 54 blocks. So when I drove her through Skid Row now, she's like, wow, like this is quadrupled or more. Like, she says, I remember when your uncle was down here, it was like certain blocks, but it was, condensed areas. But she's on now, it's out of control, So I was like, wow, that's from an older person, from decades ago. So I was asking her perspective, and she was just blown away. She's like, wow, this is, like a third world country down here. But it's hard, it's such a roller coaster ride down there. It's like, sometimes you have hope, they'll be like, we were deeply involved in the measures and the props and the funding and this and that. So I was like, all right, finally, and then it would seem like there was a little time when people were getting off the streets, and then it just came back. It almost like it always recycles, so I never go down there and say, man, this is getting way better. It's like better for a time, and then it seems just to come back, So, I think you just have to have the attitude of just literally helping one person at a time. Because when you look at a mass scale, you get frustrated. You're just like, how is this happening? Los Angeles, over 70,000 homeless in LA County, and all the power, the power we have, the resources, the money, like everything, and it's so frustrating. And, yeah, so I go down, even though homelessness, let's face it, has a negative stigma. There are a lot of success stories under the Pauly's Project belt. We've had people get off the streets, and it's amazing. And those are what are near and dear to my heart. This past Saturday, I saw my friend, and he was like walking through. He just happened to be with another friend, but he had like a hard hat and like a yellow, like a city vest. And his name is Mike. And I was like, Mike, what are you doing? I mean, he hugged me. Oh my God, Paul, what are you doing? Well, what are you doing here? He's like, you're still doing this? He's like, I remember I was in my tent on San Pedro 6 years ago, and he used to give me waters. He's like, I work for the city now, or whatever. It was just like, it was awesome, and just to see his smile and his whole attitude change. He did a little video for me, and but it's people like Mike that give me hope. Like, there are people that can make it off the streets. It's a smaller percentage, but there's a lot of them that are going to die, unfortunately, in the streets. I've lost numerous friends. I can't even tell you. I was going through my Google photos, and it was like, he's dead. He got stabbed. He died. This lady had cancer and died. There's just, I lost track of how many people have died. But, if we can help a few off the streets or whatever the scenario may be, I'm good with that, but I think in LA, we're so numb to it. It's everywhere. You just put turn your head to it. But there has to be people like Pauly's Project out on the front lines trying to save humanity.
Right on. You brought up a really important topic, and, it's one of the things that I think a lot of people who are outside of this issue don't really understand. Like, when you're a volunteer, when you do outreach, when you work with homelessness, especially around Skid Row. But I mean, now there are many Skid Rows all over the city. So if you work in homelessness, it is inevitable that you will make friends with somebody who will pass away. And that is a pain that is so deep and profound. I don't think people really understand how bad that is and how hopeless it can feel, even though you're trying to do everything. You try to offer them water, you try to get them in housing. But a lot of people, sometimes it's drug addiction. Like, you can see them dying. Like, you visit them weekly, right? You go out there, you get them food, and then you come back 1 week later and they look a little bit more skinnier, or they have more scabs. And, you just see their health deteriorating in real time. And that there's almost nothing you can do about it. Or, sometimes, like you said, there's murders. People get stabbed, people get shot, people, fluke, take a drug that they were expecting and maybe it had fentanyl unexpectedly, and, they pass away. So sometimes it's just kind of a crazy fluke. And I'm so curious, like, how you go about coping with that, and still find a way to move on and have hope and still give hope to others. And if you could speak about, just that emotional journey for you, and how do you even go about processing that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I know my son, I feel, has kind of prepared me for this work. I don't live a normal life. When you caregive for somebody all the time, he's probably 26 years now. He just had his birthday, but it's changing diapers, feeding him, bathing him, cutting his nails, shaving him, doing all these, tasks to have him make it through another day. So when I go out there and I'm helping these people, a lot of people put me on a pedestal and I say, I'm not doing anything different than I do in the four walls of my house. You know what I mean? Like, my son has prepared me for this work, so I just have a big heart. I'm very compassionate. My son has taught me a lot of patience and stuff. But this line of work isn't for everybody. I feel like I was a little more soft-hearted when I first started going out, because a lot of them have my numbers. Paul, I need a 10. It's raining. This, that. I'll still go down there, but it's like I can't jump every second for everybody now. I have to have energy for my son. So, you just learn kind of to cope through the trauma. It's like Pauly will have a rough morning, and then I'll go to Skid Row. I'll hear so-and-so died, so-and-so, whatever. And I'll come home and it takes me like 2 hours to decompress. I'll put my phone down and people are like, asking me stuff, or I'll talk to a friend with such a petty scenario. I don't have the latest iPhone. I'm like, dude, really? Like, what I just went through with my son, and then what I went through in Skid Row, it's like, you have no idea what people go through, but kind of in a bad way too. I don't know if I was at some event recently, and there was like a big old fight broke out, and everybody moved but me, but I didn't even realize it. People were like, dude, are you okay? They're like frozen. And I'm like, I think I'm so used to, like, I've seen a lot out there and a lot of fights, and I'm always, witnessing a lot of trauma, I guess you could say. So I was just kind of numb there, like, dude, you're staying there like frozen, like everybody's running and you're just like, la, la, la. No. I was like, well, that's kind of, I feel a little bit hardened, because when you're around it for 10 years all the time, the things you've seen and heard. So that's maybe not a positive trait that's helped me. So I need to soften up a little bit, but I think it just comes with the territory, because you're kind of prepared and you see so much. And every time I go with, say this past weekend, we come across 125 people. Well, most of them tug on my jacket. Hey, Paul, let's go over here. I need to talk. So this happened. So so-and-so is after me. So, okay, cool. Okay, I'll talk to him. Then so-and-so, Paul, I just found out, I have cancer. Whatever. It's always like something traumatic, but I'm the go-to guy. So I have to be a counselor with a smile. Hey, man, you'll be okay. You're going to work through it. So, it's definitely, it's not easy. So you have to learn how to turn it on and turn it off. But, yeah, man, it's tough.
And it's funny that you shared that. That actually kind of reminds me of an observation that I had of my own. I started volunteering in 2014, and within my first year of volunteering, so 2015, with Monday Night Mission, I remember it was like a Wednesday night, and we went down there, and our good friend Mel runs that, and he runs that organization very much like a drill sergeant. We know Mel,
clockwork,
very orderly
militant,
and very kind of militant. And he had always trained us, like, if I say there's a problem, hit the floor, like, hey, or drop everything you're doing and run back to your cars or whatever. Like, he was always kind of like drilling it into us,
strict rules. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, man, okay, whatever. But there's one night in 2015 where something did pop off, and there was actually gunshots that happened.
I think I was there that night.
Oh, shoot.
Shots rang out?
Yeah, shots happened, and they were literally just like within a half block of where we were set up. And it was crazy. And I remember, once the shots rang out and Mel gave the order, and everybody's, understandably very shook. All the volunteers, we all hit the floor. I'm going to admit something really, really funny. So I was on line duty, and so I wasn't handing out sandwiches. I was actually further along the line of patrons who were coming up, waiting to get their food. And I was actually standing right next to a puddle of piss, right? So when the shots rang out and I saw all of the colleagues hit the floor, obviously that's what you're supposed to do when bullets are flying. And I paused and I looked down and I was next to a giant puddle of piss. And I looked at the gunfight that was happening and I looked back down at the piss. And I actually just started running because I didn't want to dive and hit the floor. And now that I think about it, that was actually probably the wrong thing to do.
I was going to say, you could have just added to it. You could have pissed in your pants. And I thought that's where you're going to go to.
Yeah. But anyway, long story short, I survived. I did not catch a bullet that night. But I really need to assess my, risk versus reward processing. But nonetheless, though, what I distinctly remember about that night is all the patrons, all the people who actually lived on Skid Row who were waiting to get food from us, none of them flinched. For them, they just looked at the gunfight and the bullets, and they're like, "This is just an everyday thing."
That sucks, but we want our sandwich, though.
Yeah, all of us were like, "Oh my God, we're gonna die! We're gonna die!" And we're all buzzing afterwards. When we got back to Chinatown and we decompressed and we talked about it, for a lot of people, that was the most excitement they've ever had in their life, and probably me included. I can't even recall, besides maybe zip lining or bungee jumping or something, but the desensitivity, the fact that the local population didn't even flinch, and that's
kind of desensitized a little bit.
That is shocking unto itself. And I think that has now kind of rubbed off on you. It's rubbed off on me. And it's weird. I think honestly, we'll need therapy in the future to just unpack everything we've ever seen down on Skid Row. It's so
even
crazy.
Recently, remember there was that man who was kind of overdosed on the ground, and I mean, a lot of the people are like, "Oh my God," they were hyperventilating. I'm like, "What happened there? The guy's on the ground." I'm like, "Okay," so I went over there and we were trying to shake him. He wasn't moving, and anyways, I was like, "We got to make this 911 call," and then they came and they hit him with Narcan and stuff, and he came back. But yeah, that's just stuff you see all the time,
Yeah. I guess it's...
But I think also what Pauly's project does is when it adds in the volunteers, and they need that shock value. They need to understand that it does exist out there.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. That's
we
a good
just
point. The reality.
Some parents of my son's Boy Scouts, right? And I think there are about 12 Boy Scouts. And they're looking at these people and they cannot believe what's going on. So they sat there and stared and we said, okay, open up the bins for the clothes. Go ahead and you can, and we're trying to let them know they're regular people, right? Ask them, do you want something? Oh, did you want a banana? And they said, yes. And I said, okay, we'll give them the banana. But it's so funny. At the very end, they kind of got used to it, but they saw a kitten. And when they saw the kitten, everything was exactly the same as if they would have been home. It was so amazing. And the person there, I think, who had the kitten, but they were just looking at it. And I think it just humanized their whole experience because all the boys wanted to hold the kitten. And then, oh yeah, you want a banana? And then it just became very casual.
Yeah,
and
they're like, these people have pets. And it's like, yeah, they have dogs and cats like all of us.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And then they said, oh, there were dogs, I think, there. But it was really very impactful. And especially for the parents, because the parents were saying, oh my gosh, look at this. These are regular people. And then what was great is when we went to kind of each stop, the people stopped and he had friends out there and they were saying, okay, I've got you guys here. You're my audience. I want to teach you something. So we had somebody who was singing a song talking about his life and talking about the heartache that he's had being homeless, but that he made wrong choices. And it was pretty cool to hear him sing those words, right? And then you also heard someone else saying, look, guys, stay in school. I love when they say, listen to your mom. So I looked at my son saying, yeah, listen to me. But again, they were really able to talk to people because then they're not just somebody who's homeless, who's dirty, who needs something. They're actually adding value. They're a human being adding value. And I know Paul always says to people, ask them their names and look in their faces, right? Because they're invisible to everybody, right? What's your name? Jim. Oh, hey, Jim. How's it going? And it was so great. He felt like $1 million. Remember, what was his name? I don't recall his name, but Mango.
Oh, yeah.
Mango. Yeah. Anyways, it was just great. And he's like, I'm online. And he just walked off, on cloud 9 because these kids were looking at him like, wow, thank you for this information. And, like I said, he needed to give that back too. We were giving to him and he was giving back to us.
Yeah.
So
especially like that particular kid, kids come from all walks of life, but let's face it, these might be a little more Orange County on top of the hill type of kids.
Yeah.
So it's good for them to see that because this is very a new element for them that they're not used to. So, I think the first thing, especially that age, young teens, is fear. I'm sure they were a little nervous. What are we getting into? But I think it took a couple encampments for them to finally open up. And the whole thing was sending them the message that, hey, we have to, be kind and, treat everybody the same. So I think when I have, it's like I could talk to them and give my little pep talk, but when I have some of my friends experiencing homelessness talk to them, it really hits home. So, you could tell they were totally engaged, and, having somebody sing that song and then having somebody talk to them, I think it really touched them.
And they were the ones who actually made the hygiene kits about a month ago. So for them to hand them off was very cool. Like they saw from beginning to end, right? And people were holding. And one thing that really struck me was we were giving out socks, and the boy had socks. Like one boy gave it to them, and then the lady went down to get something else. And this other kid said, "Do you want some socks?" She said, "Oh, no, thank you. I already got some." And they looked at her like, wow, like, you're being truthful. Like you have, all this. And so it was just great I saw that kid's face like, really? And then guess what he said? "You can have some more." And he gave her another pair of socks. So again, all these lessons that people are coming in. So as much as Pauly's project does for the people out there, our volunteers are getting that much more out of it. Like yourself, Roger, right? That's why you keep coming back, right?
Yeah, 100%. I love all the anecdotes about the kids and the Boy Scouts and, really bringing the young generation into this movement. I think it's so crucial. And I see it a lot. A lot of my friends, who are parents, they're always asking like, "Hey, our children, they're driving around town, they're looking out the window, they see all the encampments and they want to help, and they're always so outraged, I guess, like, hey, how come nobody's helping them? How come like they don't? I guess they still have an innocence about them, and they still have a feeling that there's injustice here and that they can help. And it bless them, because I think part of being an adult, unfortunately, is to really become kind of jaded and cynical to other people's suffering, and to kind of just accept inequality as reality. And that's kind of a cruel trick that society does to you as an adult, is to make you just kind of accept that things are unfair, and to beat you into submission, into thinking that you can't change it, when we all know that the truth is that is in fact a lie. But going back to, bringing children into the movement, I mean, I have witnessed it myself. You guys have done that really great giving events in Gladys Park, and I saw like a whole troop of Girl Scouts who are there volunteering and all that. I guess, what advice would I have to other concerned parents out there who want to really get involved? Because I know not every opportunity is perfect for kids. And, we don't want to downplay the dangers either of going out on the streets and trying to do good. I mean, it's such a delicate balancing act of, having a pure heart, but then leaving yourself exposed and vulnerable. And unfortunately, those are, two things that you always have to balance. So like, what advice do you guys have for any parent who is hearing this conversation or seeing what you guys do and wants to get involved, whether through your organization or any other organization?
Sure. Yeah. I had a father, and he said, "We learned the hard way. We've been watching your videos and Pauly's project posts." And he says, "I'm going to get my family. We're going to do an act of kindness. We're going to make sandwiches. We're going to go to the hardest Skid Row. We're going to get them out the window." He's all, "Dude, that went south." There was he went on the busiest corner. He's like, there was grown men and my kids are in the back. They're grabbing. He's like, it was like a free for all. It was horrible. Kids are bawling. He's like, I'm rolling up the window, squishing a guy's arm. He's pounding. He's like, that was the worst idea ever. So I said, yeah, you might have wanted to ask me first, because I wouldn't have recommended that. Obviously, if you're going to go small scale, start with one or two people on a small, street, going the hardest Skid Row. Again, he didn't know. I was learning from experience. But, I'd say, hey, if you had to do it all over again, go to an established organization like Pauly's Project. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Maybe somebody that's already done it before. Or start with the onesie twosie people on the side of the road, But I think he had good intentions, but but a lot of people are scared to take kids or teens out, but I think they're the ones that need it the most, so most people don't accept kids. I do. I've never really been against it, obviously with adult supervision, and depends on where you're taking them, but like what we used to do, obviously Monday Night Mission, I know that was a different level at night, and it's a little more intense, so not for that, but yeah, I would say just see who you could link up with, or if you're gonna do it, just people always ask me, like, I'm going to 7-Eleven, there's a guy asking for money, what do I do, Paul? I'm like, dude, that's on you, on your heart. If you want to give them $1 or $2, great. If you don't. I can't tell you what to do. And what if they use it for that? Well, if you're going to give it with intentions of what are they going to use it for, it's probably not the best way to give it to them. Like, once I give, somebody a pair of shoes, I'm not like, is he going to sell it? Is he going to wear it? It's like, I give it from the heart and that's it. So it's really hard to, I try to guide people, but kind of got to go on your gut instinct.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think with my kids, because I'm always having kids in my car, is what I do is I humanize the person, right? When I see a lady on the street, we're coming off the freeway, not the safest place to give them something, right? Okay. But I said, I wonder what her name is. Why do you think she's out there? Do you think she's out there? And, I just look at her shoes. When do you think the last time she took a shower? And when you humanize them, then the kids look at them like, oh, wow. And they actually look at them because most, they're usually invisible, right? But I also, if we are at 7-Eleven, you have to obviously gauge, right? Sometimes you can say if they're talking to themselves, we're out of here. You just don't know. But if sometimes they're just looking there, I know I asked my kids, I said, somebody's giving a handout. Okay, we'll give him $1, whatever it is. But I know I had a kid in my crew. My daughter's best friend, and I've taught her, right? I've taught her to, okay, well, depending on the situation, we'll give him $1 or something. And her mom was in the car. And she's like, Mom, do you have $1? And she's like, don't you dare give them. She's like, they're going to buy drugs. They're going to buy alcohol. They're going to. And so her daughter, who's normally very quiet, she goes, Mom, I want $1. She's like, you're not supposed to do this. She's like, Miss Catherine taught me. I'm like, yeah, I did. But I think, again, we humanize them and that they're not these strange, crazy, and the other thing, too, is you have to be very safe. You got to know your scenario. I've done many a time where we're like, nope, they're, don't look at them, keep walking. I know, Mom, but look at them. I said, no, it's not the right situation. So again, but don't make them seem like they're all like alcoholics. Things that are such bad people. They're all, there's so many different scenarios. And I think just from our experience of being out there, you talk to them, my gosh, you hear their stories and you're like, why are you out here? So again, I think going back to your question about including children, I think just by talking about it, I think it really takes out just a ton of the fear that is out there. But when they can, again, humanize them, I think that is just huge. That's worked in our family and their friends.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It brings to mind, you can never make an assumption over somebody's history or like why they found themselves on the street. And I think increasingly, as the years go on and our unhoused population continues to grow and grow and grow, a lot of people are kind of just slipping through the cracks financially for a variety of reasons. And, case in point, the percentage of, college kids who are now unhoused, like sleeping in their cars and stuff to the point where, like people like Mel have to go and create unhoused, college dorms and, work on programs like that because those figures are staggering. And I'm kind of blanking on the percentage, but I think it was like north of something like 20% of, Cal State kids are housing insecure. And that number even was higher, I think, during the pandemic. And I do know from kind of the nature of the work that we've been doing it, and we've been doing it for so long, like, going on a decade, that you yourself, you probably have seen a demographic shift in the people who are finding themselves on the streets, right? It's starting to become younger. It's starting to become more racially diverse. Like, And it's a little crazy now just how many people defy your kind of typical stereotype of, a homeless person. And it's no longer just, the addict or the mentally ill or, oftentimes you would assume it's, somebody middle-aged and pushing a shopping cart and, in and out of jail. But now it defines any kind of stereotype because the issue is so widespread. Maybe you both can speak to just how, the unhoused population is shifting and maybe what you guys are doing to maybe respond to it, or what organizations out there or policies out there are doing to address this, if there's even a solution at all.
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think most people, back in the days would think like it's the elderly man pushing the shopping cart, but it's so far from the truth now. It's like you said, every race, every age group. I think even after the pandemic, we've seen such a variety of people living in the cars. There's a lot of motorhomes. I mean, it's just every scenario you can run across. So it's hard to put your finger on it, but we have seen more families out there. And then you would talk to them. It's like, well, my wife lost her job or my husband. I mean, it doesn't take much. You can't survive on a single income here in LA. I mean, it's very few that can do that. It takes two. And, like I said, it could be any one of us out there. So whenever we see, obviously, women and children, I make a quick call and, we'll get them in shelters. But yeah, no, I have seen numbers go up. But such a diverse crowd, like you said. And then I think when I see like the younger, probably mid-20s, a lot more of them out there. So there's a lot more violence I've seen. Them, I think, taking advantage of the older people knowing they get that check on the first. So a lot more drugs. So that's a hard part. It's like all this money is passing, which is great. And people are like, do you see that change out there, Paul? And I'm like, I see it changing, but almost like for the worst, Wow. I see, when talking to the homeless, they're like, yes, some people are getting housing. Some people are getting off the streets, but the ones that are left are kind of last man standing type of thing. And so there is a lot more violence that I've heard and seen. So yeah, it's like you want to have hope and you hear there's good days and bad days and so-and-so got housing or, so-and-so's still out here. So yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster ride, but, yeah, just from experience, I think this last 2 years, I've really seen it expand with all types of, I'll just give a quick story. And this is just, I was talking to a guy not too long ago and he's like, Paul, I was just like you. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? So just a regular dude, and I'm married, had a house. I was a chef, worked at a high-end restaurant. So what happened, this is how he said his life kind of spiraled out of control. He got a divorce. He's like, hey, things happen, whatever. It didn't work out with me and my wife. Fortunately, judge gave her the house. So now I'm living in an apartment, working at a high-end, restaurant. Well, the restaurant shut down during the pandemic. So now I couldn't find any other jobs. So now I lost my apartment. So all my family's in Chicago. So now I have no apartment. I'm by myself. Wife has all the money in the house. So people said, dude, you are now officially homeless. He's like, well, where do I go? Go to Skid Row. There's, at least you can eat there. There's shelters. So he's like, whatever I thought it was 100 times worse. I'm freaking shaking. I don't belong here. Like, it is a scary place. It was like I was in a outside prison. So he said, yeah, the first week, he's all, mind you, I never do drugs. I don't drink. I'm a good, straight, normal, hardworking guy. But he says after a week, I started drinking. You got to do something to numb the pain. Yeah. Like, nobody in their right mind lives down here. So people getting jumped, people getting stabbed, you're screaming, fire engines. It's just chaos. So then he said, like, week 2 or 3, and went to, dude, you want to smoke some weed? It'll calm your nerves, man. You're a rookie here. It'll mellow you out. So he's all, I went to weed. I didn't think it was that bad. He's all, a month later, I'm hooked on heroin. And when I met him, he was there, like, he was on his 3rd month. So he's like, dude, my life has spiraled out of control. I'm a heroin junkie. I have nothing now. And he's all, but that's just what happens. And I was like, wow, like, you went from up here to like tanking quick within 3-month span. So, that's just one scenario, but you can see where it happens,
That does remind me, I've had a lot of conversations with people who, they're caseworkers or, they do the same kind of work as us. And I had a really good friend, Stephanie, a colleague in this work, and she had kind of described it like this, right? how you find yourself hooked on drugs. You know, you go down to Skid Row, you become unhoused, and you might not have been an addict at first, but then you become an addict for a lot of the reasons that you said. Now, your friend, unfortunately, you know, was finding downers and, you know, opioids and things to numb the pain. Another thing that can happen is she was telling me that sometimes if you're a female in particular, right, you know, because, you know, there's so many predators out there, you can be sexually assaulted, you know, kidnapped, whatever can happen. Like, things are really, really dangerous out there. And also food is really expensive. So, you know, even if you only have a couple bucks on you and you're trying to like eat fast food, that's still not even enough. I mean, nowadays you need like $8, $9 to even get a meal, you know? So, if given the choice and you're offered like an upper, like meth or something like that, well, the hit of meth is cheaper than the meal. The hit of meth will let you keep your guard up all night. You don't have to eat for 3 days in a row, meaning you don't have to spend, you know, on 6 meals or whatever. So it almost becomes like this weird, like, defensive measure where it's like the drugs are an escapism. The drugs are a way to guard yourself. And it's really just kind of messed up. Like, there are so many assumptions that, you know, you ended up on the streets because you're an addict, but oftentimes you become an addict because you're on the streets. And I wish people understood this path more. I think they would have a lot more sympathy if they understood that.
Definitely.
Now that we've talked about the horrors of living on the streets and how, you know, different factors can impact that, and it's sometimes not what you expect, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what Pauly's project is doing to get people off the street and also maybe even preventing people from getting on the street in the first place. I know you guys have some cool programs.
Yeah, I think what's one huge thing is taking that experience that we've had for the last 10 years, right, and really taking it into our just cities. You know, we live in Covina, so it's bringing it into every day. You know, no, they're not talking about the 70,000 people that we have, right? Or the amount of people we have in Skid Row. We're talking about your everyday city that has their population of homelessness. But homelessness, again, is not just somebody on the street. Then we're trying to, like you said, do the preventative. So every Saturday, we have our community Walmart and Sprouts and a few other organizations that give us food, right? They give us produce, they give us bakery. I mean, they give us whatever is available. And we go out to different locations, and there's families there, and they are one paycheck away from losing their apartment. There may be 3 families living in one apartment because they've lost a job or because of what somebody's gotten a divorce. You know, there's a ton of different situations and stories that we've heard, and they are waiting every Saturday morning that we have our dedicated team that, and actually we need more volunteers, right, Paul?
Yes.
to build that. But we are out there every Saturday, rain or shine, and not just every 2 weeks like we go to Skid Row or to downtown Los Angeles, but it is amazing to see the families that we have impacted. It almost looks like a little, you know, mini swap meet that we set up, but I mean, people need food. They need, and you know how expensive food is these days, right? And it's good food. It's Walmart food. It's Sprouts. I mean, so we've been very fortunate that we've been approved to be able to provide those services. But during those lines that people are in, we hit the families, individuals, the elderly, handicapped, veterans. I mean, there's stories galore. Everybody needs that help. And they're normally by apartments and things of that sort. But we drive up, the lines are there just waiting for us because they know. And what do? They're there helping us, taking them out, helping us set everything up. And it's just a beautiful thing that they're helping us, we're helping them. But we want to grow those programs. And that's what we want to do because, again, these people are not on the streets, right? But we want to keep them in homes. When you talk to organizations about that do help the homeless, they say, no, we need to be more preventative because we don't want families on the streets, right? What can we do to help you stay in your apartment, stay wherever you're at, and keep them safe as well? But I think that's a huge thing that Pauly's project is doing now is we're going into just regular cities and trying to work with the politicians, work at the police department, work at the fire departments. And it's not like a big group of people. There's little pockets, there's just onesie, twosie people. And so those are the homeless we're trying to manage and help. And then you've got the families that we're trying to help. So, I mean, it's out there. It's out there. It's not like we have to really search for it. We're out there working with, because you can't work with anybody. You have to work with businesses, right? And you got to work with the infrastructure of each city. And each city does it differently. So that's what we're learning, and that's what we're trying to move forward and getting funded for. Because a lot of people are saying, well, why are we going to, you guys are doing Skid Row, but we're here in this city. Okay, well, how can we help? Let us know. Because again, like Paul said, we're establishing relationships. And when you establish relationships with people, these people, they don't want your help. Yeah, right. You're going to throw us in jail. Oh, you're going to take my kids away. No. So no, we want to establish a relationship so that we can further offer the services that they need and educate people. They don't know what's out there. So we know, and we're not reinventing the wheel. Here, come and work with our friends who do that. Oh, you need identification? Okay, this is with this organization. So Pauly's project is phenomenal. And that's going to Paul, of being able to collaborate with other organizations. Again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's out there, but we need to let people know and educate them in that same time.
Wow. I would love to follow up that, that wonderful breakdown of like the food to family services. And I'm so curious, like what other services and programs do you guys currently run? And what are some of the other big partner organizations that you currently work with? Off the top of my head, I know you have LASA that comes out, people from the city who actually, help get people into housing, and they rely on you guys for those relationships. So maybe you can speak to that, and then also the other programs that maybe a casual follower of Pauly's project isn't aware of yet.
Well, like Catherine said, I think there are our food thing that we jumped on board. I think, how long has it been now? Maybe like 6 months or something like that. We have our volunteer Dion that runs that, and
phenomenal.
She's incredible. But as we know, like the old days, you want to buy groceries for the week, it was $50. Well, that thing now is $200 if you go to the store and load up your cart, so a lot of these people are like, man, now I could keep the lights on this week, or now I can pay my water bill. I just saved $200, so people are so food deprived nowadays, especially when you have a large family. So we linked up with our community partners, like I said, Sprouts and Walmart. So that's been amazing. But yeah, as far as me, I've doing this 10 years. I've seen a lot of nonprofits, come and go. But there are particular ones, like 5 or 6 that I still work with, LA on Cloud9, or, Project Coffee Cup, or my friend Yuri as a future superhero. There's all sorts I can name. But we try to stay true to what we do. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, some organizations are out there for the photo ops, let's face it, but I'm very particular who I work with, and the ones I do are solid, and they're out there doing, good things. But we also have big boys, we've had, like the Denny's and the McDonald's, and who else? There's a lot of big, Smart and Final. There's so many things, but I think it's just trying to have a big circle of influence, I have a huge network that I can make a phone call and, this family's in need for this, or I just got a call last week, there's a 12-year-old that needs size 13 shoe. Okay, we got that. He needs clothes. So we do so much behind the scenes that maybe isn't like publicized, or there's a family, their daughter was shot and killed. They're almost going to be homeless. They've been in depression. The parents, their daughter got killed like a year ago. Yeah. So, they need a few bucks to make rent. So, I'm not saying, hey, I just gave him $200, but, it's stuff like that we do behind the scenes.
I'll give you one story with our when we do the Walmart community work, that the guy who's helped us, right, from Walmart, he was he had his cancer.
Yes.
Tell that story. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he is a gentleman. Dion told me about, our volunteer, that he has cancer, I think stage 4.
Going to chemo?
Yeah, he's going to chemo. He's not really in a good situation right now. But he helps us on Saturdays to unload, all the fruit, produce. I mean, it's a lot of work. And she said one time he pulled up his truck and she looked at his tires and they were like paper, like bald, And she's like, how do you even drive on that? Like, that's not even, safe. And then that was during the time it was raining. And she sent me a picture. I was like, oh my gosh. So, we pitched in, we bought him, 4 brand new tires. But it's just little things like that we do all the time,
But we went out to our Pauly's Project family, right?
Yeah.
And we gave them the scenario and they said, okay. And so we got in some money. We gave him the tires and a little extra money, but he could not believe that we were giving to him. He was like, what are you talking about? So to know the stress, right? To know about his life. And he was actually giving to us with helping us every Saturday, allowing us to still be approved for Walmart, right? And all of these things. But we have a video on it on Instagram. Yeah. Oh my gosh, made me want to cry because he was so appreciative. He could not believe about his tires. It's tires, right? Yeah. And he's worried about his life. And we're like, no, you need tires. So
I think we have a big reach, like on Instagram and stuff like that. It's like you share a little video or clip of an act of kindness and, I'll get tons of DMs, like a lady in Chicago. She's like, I just went up to a man because I saw your video and it was raining out here in Chicago. So I brought him a blanket or whatever. So you never know who you're touching, So if it's helping the homeless or helping families in need, I think that, we've been consistent. That's what I could say for the past 10 years. So we kind of lead by example, even during the pandemic. I think we stopped for like 2 weeks. And after that, we still hit it hard. So that's what I could say. I've seen, other groups. I'm not knocking out some come and go. But as far as us, like we've been solid out there. So we have a good reputation. And, we try to connect with other organizations to build this network.
And we continue to build and help so many. But I think it goes back to what Pauly's Project is and who it's behind. And it's Paul and Pauly. So to be a single father, right? Managing all these relationships with here and there. And Pauly's Project is helping so many other, not just individuals, but our organizations. If we've got something, we want to share the love. Here, you guys give it out in Long Beach. Here, you guys go give it out and wherever. But Paul is there day in and day out with his son, right? Worried about his son. We just sponsored a big autism event, right? And I don't want to cry, but Pauly came in and everybody was singing happy birthday to him. It was for Pauly. And so Paul was such a proud father, bringing him in. And I remember when Paul was younger and he was going to have this son and he's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And okay, you have a beautiful baby, right? And we have another niece and another nephew who were born within a few months of him. So we had 3 babies and little by little, everybody's, they're looking at this, they're doing that. And Pauly's a little different. Right. And so Paul's still the young father and okay, nobody wants to say anything. And then again, they realize, okay, took him in and he's blind, but Paul stood there and he was like, okay, I'm a father. Right. And I'm going to do everything I'm going to do. But seeing him from then to now, like him and Pauly have their own language, right? Yeah. They're sitting there in their own little world. But the beauty of what Paul does and what he does day to day as a person and as a father is incredible. And again, I know he never wants to take any credit for it, but I know I manage my 3 kids and my husband and my job and all these things. And I think, my gosh, I'll call him. Can I call you back? I'm dealing with something, right? But he's like any parent. And I'll tell a funny story because, we all deal with situations with our families. And I remember I was like, what's wrong? I'm like, he's mad at Pauly. He's yeah, he had his little, what do you call it?
Go talk machine.
And he was like, water. He's like, so bossy.
Yeah.
He's bossing me around.
This little board, it's auditory. So Pauly presses it and it's what he wants. So it's like, I want water. It's auditory. So it tells me, I want to play. I want a snack. I want So sometimes it's like, boom, boom. I'm like, water. I'm all, dude, quit bossing me around. Like, he's all like smiling, like he knows what he's doing. I'm like, wait a minute, like you're taking advantage of me.
Yeah. So I think that's the uniqueness of Pauly's project, right? Of the work we do and who it's behind. So
yeah, well, I think that's why I'm so passionate about it. A lot of people have their kids, and so my daughter's going to get married one day. My son's going to get a new car. My kid's going to go off to college. My kid's going to get a new job or whatever. It's like I might not have those things with Pauly, but this is what I can do to honor him and in his name, and so this is how I put my son on the map. This week we have another mural of Pauly going up near Skid Row downtown. I think it's like his fourth mural of himself. But yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, so many people love us and support us, and it's a story within a story. People say, so what is Pauly's project? Is it a single father raising a blind and autistic child, or is it this community work you're doing to help the unhoused and families? And I'm like, it's both mended together because there's not one without the other. Pauly, at the end of the day, he's the inspiration and driving force to what happened to our growth now. We planted the seed and now it's evolved. So, when people say, what's Pauly's project? I'm like, do you have an hour? Because we cover a lot of ground and it's a beautiful story on both ends, but yeah, at the end of the day, this is not, something I do on the side. This is like my full-time gig, and I love helping people. And now I feel since we've grown this network, I'm like, sit back and orchestrate. Catherine's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, talking to, this was just driving up here. I'm getting 16 pallets. I'm facilitating it. This is just good, brand new clothing for kids. So I got this organization's going to take it. The other organization's got to pick up 2. Then we got a celebrity that gave us 16 pallets 2 weeks ago. So we're dealing with like big stuff, big numbers. And, we have a sponsor that might get us a second storage in LA because we're too packed in, Glendora. So people see all these beautiful things happening, but, we still need support. We're never going to say, oh, wave the white flag, we're done. We don't need help. It's like, it still takes money to keep this thing running. So there's always ways that people can, either donate or volunteer or help. There's a lot of opportunities to jump on board with Pauly's project.
Incredible. So I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. What ways specifically can people step up and help your organization? And I'll preface that by saying, I was in a similar situation where I just really loved everything you guys were doing. And I decided, okay, maybe I can throw a fundraising party. And I had people come over, a bunch of DJs, caterers, and turn it into, a fun thing. But the call to action was, hey, if you want to come through to my house party, please bring any number of these items on this, like a wish list of donations, whether that be, socks or hygiene products or, sleeping bags, camping gear. And that ended up being a really successful drive. And that's just one way to get involved with you guys. But what are other ways that people out there can, get into and step up with?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, we appreciate it. That was an amazing fundraiser night that Roger had for us. But yeah, no, there's plenty of opportunities. We always say volunteering is huge. We go out the first and third Sunday of every month. And donation items are always huge because we come across, anywhere from 125 to 150 people every other Sunday, and we give out, socks and shoes and underwear and hygiene kits. We always need cases of water, stuff like that. But, our biggest need is obviously the financial support. There's obviously, if we get sponsorships from, companies or individuals, we just started our Patreon campaign that, you can always jump on board and give us, monthly donations, where it's reoccurring. We always tell people, don't go to Starbucks for a day, save that $5 to $10 and give it to Pauly's project, but it helps us gauge what we're working with. Sometimes we've been kind of going off the cuff all these years. It's like, okay, cool, we have $100. Oh no, we have $300, $500, whatever. But, when we can plan and we know, okay, this is our budget, these are the expenses, as Pauly's project's growing, we're helping more people, which means we need more people in our inner circle to facilitate things. So, I see this year we're on a big turning curve for the best. And, I think that's our main ask and need is people to donate and people to fundraise for us and obviously volunteer. But there's a lot of opportunities and ways that people could get involved and help. And we can't do it alone. We need the community support.
I'll jump in and add one more thing. Anybody thinking of donating, before you do that, maybe circle back with your employer, because a lot of companies, corporations do donation matching. So, double up and explore that route before just submitting your online payment.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's some things that we need, obviously more employees to run Pauly's project. Another goal is to get another cargo van. Another goal is to get another storage facility. So it's like we're definitely growing. We're helping more people. We're reaching out to more communities. So like anything, it takes manpower and funding to make this happen. So, I think that, Pauly's project, when a lot of people I talk to who I haven't seen in a while, they look at us now like, wow, dude, you've leveled up, like you're growing. And in my mind, I feel like, man, we're just at the cusp, like big things are to come, but we can't do it alone. I think we have a big reach, like through Instagram is kind of our main driving force. And it'll be some donation in Indiana, a lady is like, here, Paul, here's $500. I've been following you all these years, so you never know where it's going to come from. But I think we're pretty transparent and we show what we do out there in the streets. So I don't think people have to guess, like, is my money going to the cause? Like they know what we stand for. So that definitely helps.
And I think another thing is, as Pauly's project is growing, I think depending on the passion that you have is what you can give your funds towards. So right now we have helped the homeless, right? That was our initial focus. But now, like we talked about, families, right? But then also veterans. I mean, we help 1 million veterans out there, and we work with their families, or those are a lot of our volunteers, right? We've had somebody who actually was looking for a family member out there. I mean, so we are front line. We're talking about the handicapped, right? The mentally ill, the autism, right? Like I said, we had just had an event within the last month. So there are a lot of ways that people can give due to their passion, right? We want to give something where we know the money's going to what we believe in. And so that's where we're slowly evolving into other programs. And we were looking at talking to a bank, and they were saying, okay, we want to fund you. And what were they going to be funding? It was health concerns, because people don't have underwear and socks, right? So what happens there? They've got to go to the hospital, right? And then, it just continues to add more and more costs, and these poor people, what they're going through. But what could be the fix? Underwear and socks. So that's what we were talking to that bank about funding. And again, what we're now looking towards is resource fairs, right? So that we can provide resources that are out there. We're just the funnel, right? We're just saying we're calling people and having these resource fairs, and we can focus on the elderly who are homeless, right? Or needs resources. We could focus on families who need those resources, and we can focus on veterans. So there's a lot of different pockets that people can, again, put their money into Pauly's project, because we want to get out into our communities, right? And not just focus. We're taking our experience from Skid Row, and we're utilizing that in so many different ways. And so we're so blessed that we have had the support. But like we always say, when we're going into a grant, we can get things, right? The money for, but it's like, how do you ask people for money to pay for someone, right? Because unless we have people here to do the work, we can't do our work. And so we've been so blessed with volunteers, and we continue to be blessed with volunteers, but it's really getting the administration, the personnel behind Pauly's project, So that, and like I said, even if you have a connection somewhere, right? Maybe it's a bank, maybe it's Stater Brothers, but whatever it is, I think letting us know that we could have a little inside somewhere, talk to a person. I mean, that's where we've gotten a lot of the funds that we've been able to move forward so far. So we have a generous Pauly's Project family. And so, again, if we don't ask, right, you don't know what we need. So that's what we're really trying to move towards is getting funded so we can hire some staff and, just do more and more great things.
That's incredible. I think maybe to wrap up this wonderful conversation, and again, thank you for your time, Catherine and Paul. I like to always end on a hopeful note, and just to hear from you both, like, what gives you hope?
I think it's a lot of the success stories that hold dear to my heart, because, let's face it, there is a lot of negativity out there and people going through struggles, and that is a higher percentage of what we see. But, like this past weekend, seeing that success story of, he's so appreciative, man. When I had nothing, you guys came Sundays and you never judged me and you were so kind and, talked to me and stuff like that. So I think that's my hope, knowing that there are a lot of people getting help and, just like I said, it's the old saying, but just helping one person at a time. But I believe that we've built something strong here. We're just getting stronger and growing. And we have people that love to support Pauly's project. With a lot of negativity in the world nowadays, it's nice to see something positive and people, who actually care and trying to save humanity. So I think people grasp onto Pauly's project because, like I said, it is something positive and something, it's a feel-good type of thing. So, that's how I see it.
I also see it just, like you said, hope, like love, dignity. We give that to whoever's in front of us. And that's what our volunteers give, right? That Pauly's Project family. I mean, that's when you're at an event, right? When you're volunteering, whatever it is, it's so much fun. It's so much love, but also that we're going to continue this in different ways. I mean, we're not just sitting there with the homeless. I mean, within the last 3 weeks, we're planning events. Like I said, the autism event, the veterans, right? And then we've got helping with families. I mean, we're so blessed that we're continuing to grow. And that's the huge excitement that Paul and I, thank God, we get to manage this, and we can't do it without our volunteers and everyone else like yourself, Roger. And again, we just, it's just the excitement to come and all the opportunity to help people.
You know what gives me hope is no matter how bad my day can be, if I go out and I join, you guys on Pauly's Project or any number of really great organizations out there that are really doing the work, every time I do that, no matter how bad my day might have been, I'm surrounded by people who are highly motivated, highly optimistic, and who are dedicated. And just being around that energy gives me hope, even on days where I don't have it myself. So thank you.